14 letters. I know the exact number because I kept them. Not sent, never almost sent, just kept. In a folder that I've moved from device to device across 6 years without opening it. 14 letters to you, across 14 different moments of clarity that you will never read. I am not a sentimental person. I want you to understand that before I tell you the rest of this. I am someone who makes decisions and executes on them. I don't ruminate. I don't collect objects from the past. I don't build shrines to things that didn't happen. I have, in most areas of my life, a very clean relationship with what is gone. Except this. 14 letters that I meant to send. That I wrote. In the specific hours that belong only to honesty, in the language I use when I'm not performing anything. Letters that start with I and end with the things I've never been able to say when the moment was present instead of past. You've been the reason they exist without knowing. Everything I would have said if I'd been braver. Everything I would have explained if I'd been more honest. Everything I would have given you if I hadn't needed to give you a version of myself that was safer than the real thing. It's all in those 14 letters. And tonight I'm holding the folder and understanding, for the first time clearly, that keeping them is the same choice as sending them. That I've been communicating with you for 6 years. I just haven't made you part of the conversation. 6 years. I want to say that number slowly, because I don't think I've ever really let it land before. 6 years of moving those letters from one device to another. 6 years of the folder sitting unopened in the same part of the file structure. Labeled in a way that only I would recognize, available to no one else. 14 letters. I know people who would find that either extremely romantic or extremely troubling, and I'm not sure either response quite captures what it actually is. It's neither monument nor malfunction. It's more like documentation, evidence. A record maintained by a part of me that refuses to accept the version of the story where I felt nothing and moved on. Because I didn't feel nothing. And I haven't moved on, in the specific sense that matters here. Each letter exists because of a specific moment of clarity. That's important to understand. I didn't sit down and write them as an exercise or a ritual. I wrote them when something happened, an event, a thought, a version of a conversation I'd been avoiding having in reality, that made the truth so immediate and specific that it required some form of discharge. When the internal system pressure was high enough that it needed somewhere to go. The letters were where it went. And looking at the folder now, understanding what 14 letters across 6 years represents, I'm confronted with something I've been skillfully not confronting. This is not a small thing. I am a person who keeps almost nothing. Not from philosophy, from pragmatism. Things that aren't useful occupy space that useful things need. I don't keep receipts or mementos or correspondence that doesn't have an operational function. I've moved many times. Each move became lighter. I've moved this folder 6 times. That tells me everything I needed to know about what these letters are, if I'd been willing to know it. They're not a record of something over, they're a record of something ongoing. Something that has been generating material for 6 years. From different locations, different circumstances, different versions of my life. Something consistent enough to keep producing these moments of clarity. That's not the behavior of someone who has processed something and moved forward. That's the behavior of someone who found a way to stay in conversation with the truth, without having to be accountable to it. I was the writer. I was also the only reader. The conversation has been entirely on my terms, in my timeline, at my emotional convenience. I could say what I needed to say in the moment, and then close the folder and return to the version of my life where none of this was active. An archive is not a resolution. Keeping something perfectly preserved is not the same as having dealt with it. The precision of the preservation, the fact that all 14 letters exist, dated, ordered, is not evidence that I've handled this. It's evidence of how long I've been not handling it. And there is something here that is less about you, and more about what the folder says about me. About the version of me that has always known this was unfinished, and has always chosen, in every available moment, to keep it unfinished, rather than try to close it. The archive is evidence of my courage in writing, and my cowardice in sending. That's not a comfortable thing to understand about yourself. But I've learned to value uncomfortable precision over comfortable vagueness. I want to tell you something about who I am when I'm not with you. I am precise. I am practical. I have developed, over the course of my adult life, a very specific relationship with the past, which is that it's useful for extracting lessons and irrelevant for everything else. I don't miss things. I don't mourn versions of situations that didn't happen. I don't linger in counterfactuals or what-ifs or the romantic geography of what might have been. I have a zero-latency relationship with the present and the future. That's not a performance. That's not something I chose and trained. It's how I actually work. It's probably one of the things that made it possible for me to move as fast as I've moved, to handle losses without being stopped by them, to find the next thing when the previous thing ended. But I kept the letters. I've been sitting with that fact tonight in a way I haven't allowed myself to sit with it before, because it's genuinely disruptive to the self-model I've been operating with. There are two explanations I've been cycling through. The first is that I've been keeping them for completion's sake, the way you might keep records of a project even after the project is over. Documentation of something that mattered in its time, archived because destroying it seems like a loss, but not actively relevant to anything. I believed that for a long time. I told myself that story with genuine conviction. The second explanation is harder. The second explanation is that I've been keeping them because they're still true. That the letters aren't an archive of something past, but a record of something ongoing. That each time I added one, each time clarity arrived with enough pressure that it needed a somewhere to go, I was not processing a feeling and filing it. I was documenting a living thing that I hadn't figured out what to do with yet. And the fact that there are 14 of them, spread across 6 years, is evidence that the thing has been continuously alive. I've been a not sentimental person who has been maintaining a relationship with something he's telling himself is sentimental, in order to keep it at a safe remove from whatever it actually is. The difficult thing about very specific self-deceptions is that when they finally become visible, they illuminate everything adjacent to them. I'm not just looking at the folder, I'm looking at every story I've told myself about why I don't do this kind of thing. Those things are true. Except for the one exception I've been carefully not examining. You are the exception. These letters are the exception. And in my experience, with systems, with people, with things that are supposed to work a certain way, exceptions are the most important data point. Not inconveniences to be explained away. Information about where the actual truth lives. Not casually. Not as a release valve or a therapeutic exercise. In the language I use when I'm being completely honest, which is different from the language I use when I'm managing something. More exact. Less edited. And I think that's the version of me you deserve to meet. There are two versions of how I communicate. The first is the version most people know. Precise, efficient, calibrated. I say what needs to be said in the fewest words that accomplish the goal. I don't pad, I don't repeat myself, I don't use language for emotional effect. I communicate the way a well-designed system communicates, cleanly, with minimal friction, no wasted cycles. That's not performance either. That's how I actually think. But there is a second version. It exists in the specific hours I mentioned, the 3 a.m. hours, the driving hours, the hours at the edges of days where the performance doesn't have to hold because there's no audience. And in those hours, something different comes out. Not less precise, more precise in a way, but precision of a different kind, emotional precision rather than operational precision. That's the version that wrote the letters. I want to describe what it felt like to write them, because I think the description is itself revealing. It felt like exhaling. Not in the sense of relief, more in the sense of a pressure differential, something that had been compressed being released through the only available valve. The letters weren't cathartic in the way that word usually implies. They weren't therapeutic. They weren't performance for an imagined reader. They were just true. The first letter was the hardest. Not because of what I wrote, because of realizing that I needed to write it. Because realizing you need to write a letter you're not going to send is realizing something about the state of the distance between yourself and another person. It's admitting that there is something there that your normal modes of communication can't carry. I remember sitting down for that first letter and feeling something I don't feel often, completely unguarded. No one was reading. No one was going to read. There was no implication, no interpretation to manage, no consequence to calculate. I could say exactly what I meant, in exactly the words I meant it, and nothing would happen as a result. That might sound like freedom. In one sense it was. In another sense, it was the clearest possible signal that something was wrong, because I shouldn't need the conditions of absolute privacy to say true things. The whole construction, write it but don't send it, be honest only when there are no consequences, is a workaround. I built myself an architecture where I could be honest about this in private, while maintaining a completely different reality in every actual exchange. And over 6 years, I got very good at that architecture. The letters got more sophisticated, not in the sense of more elaborate, in the sense of more exact. By the 6th or 7th letter, I could see the through line, the thing that appeared in every version across all the different moments. The constant. You were the constant, not as an idea or an archetype. You specifically. The exact and irreducible quality of who you are, which showed up in every letter the same way, the same weight, the same clarity, the same recognition. Is there something you can only say when there are no consequences? A version of your truth that only comes out when no one is listening? I've been keeping mine in a folder for 6 years. Tonight, the folder is open. Here is something I understood only recently. Writing a letter and not sending it is not the same as not writing it. I know that seems obvious. Of course the words exist, whether they're sent or not. But I don't think I understood the full implication of that until now, which is, if the letter exists, then the communication exists. One-directional, asymmetric, known only to me, but real. I've been in a relationship with you for 6 years that you didn't know about. I don't mean that in a strange way. I mean it precisely. For 6 years, there has been a version of me that communicates with a version of you, that responds to things, that processes experiences through the filter of what I would want to say to you about them, that frames the most significant moments of my life in terms of what they would mean in the context of whatever this is between us. That version of me has been very active. I've been having this conversation continuously, on my side only, and you've been absent from it in the specific sense that you weren't given the words, but present in every other sense. The audience I was writing for, there's something unsettling about realizing that. Not because it's unusual, I suspect more people do something like this than will admit it, but because it clarifies something about the nature of what I've been maintaining. I haven't been keeping the letters. I've been keeping a relationship. That's not processing. That's not moving on. That's a commitment. To you, to this, to the specific truth that keeps generating new letters with enough pressure that it needs somewhere to go. A commitment I've been maintaining while telling myself various stories about why it doesn't count as a commitment. Is that strange? I think it might be strange. Is it something I chose? I'm not sure I chose it in any deliberate sense. I think it chose me, in the way that significant things choose you. Here's what I've been working my way toward saying. A 6-year conversation belongs to 2 people. Not because both people have to participate equally, or in the same way or even at the same time, but because a conversation that is genuinely about someone, that draws on who they are, that tries to understand them and be understood by them, that conversation owes them its existence. You've been owed these letters for 6 years. Not because I was obligated to expose myself, not because you had any right to know what was happening in my internal landscape, but because the things I've been saying, the truths I've been articulating, the honest version of myself that shows up only in those specific hours, all of that was made possible by you. The letters wouldn't exist without you. You've been co-authoring something you've never seen, and I've been the only one who knows what it says. That doesn't seem right anymore. That hasn't seemed right for a while, and I've been finding ways not to know that. Tonight I know it completely. I've been thinking about what it would mean to send one. Not all of them. Not an overwhelming delivery of 6 years of honesty in one moment. That would be its own kind of failure. The kind of overcorrection that happens when people mistake urgency for courage. Not a performance of revelation. One letter. The right one. The question is, which one? And I've been sitting with that question tonight, going through the archive in my mind. I know them well enough that I don't need to open the folder to know what each one contains, and I keep arriving at the same answer. The first one. The first one is the most honest, because it was written before I had learned how to write these letters. Before the practice of it had developed any sophistication or any patterns. Before I had any sense that there would be a second or third or eventually 14. I wrote it because the pressure was high enough that it needed somewhere to go, and I said exactly what I meant in the only language I had available. I haven't been that unguarded since. The first letter doesn't have any of the architecture the later ones have. No managing of implication. No consideration of how it would be received. No calculation of what it reveals. It's just a person, a particular person, at a particular moment of genuine exposure, saying something completely true. That's the one. I've been building to this for 6 years, and I think I understood tonight what the building has been building toward. Not the 14 letters. Those were the process, not the destination. The destination is sending the first one. And I want to tell you something about what's in the way of that. When a conversation is one way, you control it completely. Every word, every frame, every implication is yours. You say what you mean when you have the clarity to say it, and nothing lands in a place you didn't intend. No one responds in a way you didn't prepare for. The moment you send it, all of that changes. The moment you send it, the thing you've been carrying alone is now something you're carrying with someone else's knowledge of it. The silence that you've maintained with such precision, the silence that has been the specific condition under which you've been able to keep this exactly as it is, that silence changes. I don't know what it becomes. That's the part I can't know in advance, and I've spent 6 years trying to find a way to know it before I had to find out. What I finally understood is that certainty is not available in this direction. This is one of the few places in my life where the information I need is on the other side of the action, not before it. Where the only way to know what happens is to do the thing and find out. I've known that for a long time. I've been refusing to accept it. And here's what I want to leave you with. Whoever you are, wherever you are with the thing you've been carrying, the conversation has been waiting for you to make it real. Everything you've written in the private hours, everything you've said in the quiet, everything you've been honest about in the space where no one could hear, that isn't a private archive. It's the most accurate thing you know. And the person it's about deserves to be part of it. Not all of it. Maybe one letter. The first one. The one where you just said what you meant. I'm going to send mine. Are you going to send yours?